This is Dr. Craig Detweiler,
True.
and you are a mentor for so many wonderful artists. I consider you a mentor. Is that okay if I call you
Thank
that?
you. Thank you. I think it just means I'm old and have gray hair, but I'll take it.
The Mentor of the Year, Variety, 2016.
They published it. I don't know. I didn't say it. They did.
Incredible. Also, you're author, you're a professor, you're also the dean of the School of Arts at Grand Canyon University, where they showed my film,
True.
Refuse, to incredible students. Love those students.
They loved the movie.
Awesome. Awesome. And um, you have a new book out.
The book is called Honest Creativity, which implies that perhaps there's a dishonest creativity out there, or at least some creative shortcuts that we're all being invited into that actually could maybe hamstring our creative output, because I think good art is often slow, meditative, reflective. And now we have these tools that allow us to create quickly and, painlessly, seemingly. So, yeah, honest creativity is a response to the anxiety that I feel is being evoked in all of us in the age of AI. So, as generative AI seemingly threatens livelihoods in a lot of different professions, I think a lot of creative people, graphic designers, musicians, filmmakers, animators, everybody's kind of wondering, am I about to be replaced when I haven't even hardly started? And what about my education? I spent all these years, practicing my craft, and now this thing will do it in like 2 seconds. It's kind of very disorienting. So my book is a invitation to return to the core principles of HI: human intelligence, human imagination, human ingenuity, as the best long play, even in the age of AI.
Whoa. What are some of these core principles of HI?
I think I think it would be, in a sense, almost all of our what we would consider our weaknesses: fear, limitations, um, things where it's like I don't know. Those are all the best starting points for art.
Well, that's interesting because a lot of us want to hide our imperfections, our fears, our limitations, especially in a place like Hollywood. I don't want other people thinking that I don't know what I'm doing. So I'll always put up a front. But you're saying that is a place of strength?
Superpower.
Tell us more, please.
No, it's the truth of like where good art comes from. It comes from our deepest, in some cases, darkest places, right? Where we're like, man, I don't really want to share this. I don't want to talk about this. I could get hurt. I could be exposed, right? But what is the purpose of art? I think the purpose of art is to remind people that they are not crazy and that they are not alone. Art is bridge building. It's solidarity, and so admitting our our fears, our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities. That's the beginning of saying, I too have suffered. I too have questions. I too have aches and pains and trauma and things that I'm trying to cover up.
Is there a favorite artist that has done that really well?
Here's three different music artists. Marvin Gaye, who was murdered by his dad. Nick Cave, who lost one of his sons and fell off a cliff, outside their home in Brighton. Sinead O'Connor, who, had her whole career stripped away, lost two different sons, preceding her in death. Those are all very hard lives, but they also created some of the most beautiful and transcendent art.
And there's just no program or something that could quite do that.
It can imitate loss, heartache, a breakup. It can aggregate all of the art that's been done about those things. but the machine's never experienced it. And so the machine isn't going to bring anything new to the conversation.
Wow.
It can repackage old thoughts, but it can't bring new experiences to it.
Wow. But is there a way where AI can complement human creativity?
Oh, of course. No, I can, if you were, say you're involved in any kind of world building, you want to make a video game, you want to make a animated film or something, it would take, in some cases, so long to render different versions of what it is you're looking for. The ability to, I don't know, prototype things, envision things, say, I'm thinking something like this, holding something up to somebody and say, you mean more like this?
Yeah.
And then, program it in. No, I'm thinking more like that. Oh, okay. Let's put that prompt in, right? So the ability to give you quick renderings for potential clients or pitch decks, right? In the past, I think creating a pitch deck or creating a trailer or something, that would take a long time, a lot of money. Now you can at least say, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And you can start the conversation. You can perhaps start to attract the capital without a lot of capital investment. So in that sense, it's lowering the barrier of entry. So AI does create a certain accessibility and affordability, at least now, until they start charging more for certain levels of access. So it is putting tools in the hands of more people in the same way that the cell phone enables everybody to both, tell and distribute their story immediately. It may be a narrowcast. It doesn't mean you're a broadcaster. You're a narrowcaster. But you now have that power in your pocket.
Absolutely. I mean, the questions we're asking today is from ChatGPT, so,
Oh, nice. Nice. Come on. Come at me. Come at me, ChatGPT.
Well, it's funny because, I've been seeing what I think it's called Sora. Mm-hmm. There's Midjourney, where you would put the prompt in and you'll build, the world. Let's say, like Dante's Inferno, right? Blue flames and all that. Then you put it into something like Sora, and there's this other one that was really popular. Mm-hmm. And you can start animating it, and it's such an easier thing to put in a pitch deck. Because when we did Refuse, we hired artists to draw.
Sure. Who are now underemployed because of that. But anyway, that's a different story.
No, we'll bring them back. We'll see. Yeah.
OpenAI's Sora, it will create a certain kind of revolution in storytelling. But right now, right, it's like they give you 5-second, 10-second, 15-second shots. So it takes a few of those to add up to a whole movie.
Yeah.
But you could do it. You can piece it together that way. I think, was it Tyler Perry who canceled his plans for studio expansion? I think he had an $800 million studio expansion at his film facilities in Atlanta. And he canceled it the day after Sora debuted. So that's a lot of jobs lost. That's a lot of economic opportunity for the entire city. But he was like, hey, if I can go anywhere in the box, right, in this, just by a prompt in OpenAI, why do I need a studio? So it's sort of like a step beyond Marvel, right? So Marvel proved that, you sit on a couch like this and we'll just build a little spaceship around you.
Right.
And make it look cool until we all get tired of that kind of cool fake look.
Yeah.
But Tyler Perry is saying the same thing. I'm not sure. Do I need a couch? Do I need an actor? And this is why then it starts to create that anxiety. Am I replaceable? If somebody captures my voice once, now can they then do anything they want to with it? So AI, the big issues it's going to raise are things about consent, copyright, compensation. All of those things are going to be really important for artists moving forward into the 21st century.
Can I go to an extreme?
Yeah.
What's the worst case scenario with AI? I read TikTok comments on. So I saw something recently. I'm sure you've seen this. I forget the name of the company, but they developed another robot. And the way it even stands
Boston
up.
Dynamics, I believe. Yeah.
You know what the comments all say? Boston Dynamics is Skynet. and everybody's talking. Oh, this is the end. Now we're seeing it. In fact, the way they created this, I'm gonna call it a creature if that's okay, just because I work in horror. It's a cyclops. It's one giant lens like a camera, and it's like this giant lens that looks at you.
Yep. Its head can rotate 360, right? Any direction.
Is there a part of you that wonders or thinks about, or can you tell us like, are some of these fears warranted?
Uh, well, how long have we been getting the robots are taking over movies, right? I mean, the Terminator was like
92, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
or even Blade Runner before that. So we've been getting advanced warnings to be careful. The Matrix is actually kind of the outlier that says, hey, maybe we can get along. It's the only one that ends with something less than like complete destruction of all humanity by the robots. I'm okay with those cautionary tales. I think they're good because I think what it'll do is make sure that we hopefully put a few more fail safes into the system. I would say most futurists would say, yeah, that point of singularity where machines are smarter than we are, and
Consciousness.
yeah, conscious. I mean, that timeline is probably getting compressed.
Okay.
But I'm not a fatalist
Okay.
when it comes to that.
Why not?
Because I believe in well, it probably has to do with your view of human nature. Are we ultimately foolish enough to destroy ourselves? There's plenty of evidence that says, yeah, we'll choose genocide, we'll kill whole populations in the name of hate. There's a lot of evidence that we are fools. But there's also evidence that, a lot of people thought the beginning of the nuclear arms race would be the end of us. And we haven't destroyed each other. We haven't sent a huge arsenal over to Russia and they respond and blow up New York City. We got a lot of movies warning about it, but we have somehow, in our God-given wisdom, have not self-destructed yet. So I'm gambling on not on humanity's love over hate, right? It's sort of like not clear how that's going to go.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes down to it, we will figure out, hopefully, how not to self-incinerate, self-destruct. There's also futurists like Kevin Kelly, who is a person of faith, who was there for the founding of Wired magazine. He's written books like What Technology Wants. And he, in a sense, is maybe one of the only people I've read who is trying to say that maybe the rise of technology is also part of God's plan. Maybe none of this is a surprise. And then, therefore, in a sense, none of it needs to be feared. That whatever this evolution of ourselves that's happening as the machine increasingly comes inside of us, and it starts with a pacemaker or hearing aids, and pretty soon we're half cyborg. He's trying to say, well, who's to say that isn't what we were supposed to be doing and who we were supposed to be becoming as we've taken agency from the gifts of intelligence that God has given us.
That's super interesting. I mean, I just had dinner with another Fuller grad. You went to Fuller. I went to Fuller, not the same time. But they were saying, who's to say that uploading our consciousness into the cloud isn't everlasting life? Because now we get to live in the server. And we live in the cloud. And I just was like, my gosh, is this blasphemous? Or does that kind of sound cool? But, okay, you mentioned God-given instinct or gifts. You mentioned faith. You touch upon this in your book, but like, how is the Christian faith uniquely postured to speak on this?
Well, when it comes to creativity, we all recognize we were born of a creative God, right? So we come from the Creator. We are made in the image of the Creator. So we were made to be creative by a Creator. And so when we are exercising that ingenuity, that imagination, in some ways we're reflecting our godliness, our holiness, our calling. I even I wrote a book that was almost I would say broadly in defense of selfies, suggesting that we come from a self-imaging God. So when we are engaging in self-imaging, we are being right godlike. Now it doesn't mean that we can get off the rails and say, well, we become a little more like, say, the Tower of Babel, where it's like, well, I'm using this platform to literally elevate myself, right? So obviously you can misuse it, but I'm trying to say, at its best, this instinct, why did all of us immediately start taking selfies? Well, I would say because, in a sense, we're God's selfies.
We're God selfies. I love that. I love that.
And,
Wow.
and so taking up that phone and doing that is a way of not just trying to elevate ourselves, but also try to see ourselves as God sees us. And so then even those, I would call them aspirational selfies, where we're saying, this isn't who I really am, but it's kind of who I want to be, or it's how I want to imagine myself or project an image of myself. That's not that far, I don't think, from, say, the Transfiguration, where we're getting a foretaste of glory divine. So I see how I see myself now. I don't love myself now, but I hope I will be able to love myself. And I may not like my imperfections, and I'm seeing everything that's wrong with me now, but somebody sees me as perfect. And so that projected image, which can be airbrushed and it's messy, right? But that desire to be transfigured on screen, I think, is a deeply spiritual desire that is expressed through maybe one too many selfies.
Could we say that like something like feature films
Yeah.
will be like an ultimate selfie of humankind? Is that what we're trying to capture?
I think feature films are ways to express, I would call, our collective hopes and fears. It's a version of it's an aspirational, more of a collective aspiration or a collective lament, because it's intended to be shared and it's intended to be public. The group experience of it is a little like, are you feeling this? Is this funny to you? Because it's funny to me. Is this tragic to you? Because it's tragic to me. And so that's the beauty of going to the theater. And by the theater, that could also be, right, the live theater, right? That's the ancient, whether it's the ancient Greeks, whether it's no theater in Japan or whatever, it's just kabuki theater. It's always been part of that.
Great that you said that. I just watched Civil War, directed by Alex Garland, and I mean, this isn't really much of a spoiler. If it is, I'm sorry.
I won't listen. Go
but
ahead.
You won't. You're never told why the United States goes to civil war. In fact, when you see the fighting throughout the movie, you don't know who's on what side, and they purposely left it that way. And it was like clearly like there are no good guys or bad guys when it comes to war. At the end of the movie, you're just like, oh my, I would never want the U.S. to go through that. And, if you ever watched on TikTok some of these interviews at Trump rallies and stuff, people are openly saying, hey, if he doesn't get elected, I would choose violence this time or again, And it's just like at the end, though, like when we're at war, like you kind of forget why you're fighting. And it really captured that, I guess, that collective fear of like, could we, America, go down this path? Yeah.
Can we descend to that level of madness?
Yeah.
We've done it before, so we could do it again, but we need these reminders to say, do we really want to? I'm not sure. Do we? It seems kind of cool, like in theory, like, oh, it's like a video game, but then it's like, oh wait, no, that's actually my brother, that's my neighbor, that's me. Actually, I just got shot and now I'm dying. What was I fighting for? Seems kind of dumb. Maybe I should have shaken hands or sat down to some tea instead.
So how can Christian artists do a better job of of speaking to us in this way?
Just telling more whole truths rather than half truths.
Tell me a whole truth.
I mean, I'll give you an example. I once wrote, I would call it an R-rated teen sex comedy about conversion. It's like fraternities, sororities, and a lot of sex and salvation mixed up in all kinds of, shame and guilt and all this stuff. Very funny, very raw, very real. Handed it to some people, some Christians. They were like, who would want to see this? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like something that, is true. Or
Yeah.
And the guy who he said, well, I mean, yeah, it happened to me, but I just wouldn't want to put it on screen. And I'm like, what are you talking? You just admitted this piece of speculative art resonates with your own experience, and then you're like, but I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to see it, right? And so it's like, I don't know who's got the courage to wade into,
Wow.
the messy middle, and say, do you relate? Have you had this? Do you have one of these scars? Because I got this one. How'd you get yours?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I mean, that's the best of preaching, isn't it? It can't just run to the answer. You got to start with the actual pain, the actual trauma, the actual what is it we're trying to treat.
Wow. It's when you were saying that, I just saw this clear image of Jesus, and one of the first things he does to his disciples is, look, I have wounds, and it says it wasn't healed after the resurrection. So interesting.
That's is it Shelley Rambo? I think is her name. She's a great therapist, theologian.
Okay.
Psychologist, theologian, and yeah, she is acknowledging the fact that if the risen Jesus still has scars, right? The resurrected body still bears wounds, then why would we try to hide that? Is that actually going to be taken forward with us into heaven? Even as we share, oh man, this thing, yeah, let me tell you about where I got that one. But that becomes a point of connection, not just for life here on earth, but life beyond.
So, okay, with HI, human intelligence, we can have more of courage to share our wounds. In your book, you also talk about, or you ask this question, is efficiency really supposed to be that important to be human? When I read that, and I heard you talk about it before, every capitalist little bone in my body or filming, I'm like, efficiency. I mean, yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about your ideas on that?
Well, I mean, some of this came about from going to it's like the Museum of Computing History or something in San Jose. They had an exhibit that was about self-driving cars. And it was like, hey, in the future, cars will drive themselves. You will never have to drive. And there was a picture imagining you in the car, in the back seat, on a computer. And I was like, so the gift of self-driving cars is I can spend more time online. I can start working earlier. This is actually, right? We know Google, Apple, they all provide buses for their employees that have, that are Wi-Fi enabled. So you can start working on your commute. So you don't even need to look outside. You don't even need to think about where you are, what the weather's like. Just get into the box earlier. How is that efficiency progress? Maybe I need time in the car, driving around, listening to music, looking at the sky, looking at birds, looking at my neighbor, to just kind of go, okay, who am I? What am I doing? I just put 8 hours into somebody else's pocket via work in exchange for, some shekels. But what's the point of life? maybe I need at least 15 to 30 minutes in the car just to think about, I don't know, existence, right? It's Barbie on the dance floor, right? Having a good time. Do you guys ever think about dying? Right? The existential questions come in. And if we have turned ourselves into such efficient machines that we keep all angst away, right? What do we end up with? Believe it or not, more angst.
Wow. This is really speaking to me because I've been wrestling with this kind of angst. I'm working a lot, and I'm also serving in ministry, like on the weekends. So
No breaks.
yeah, and I'm telling myself, but like I'm able to provide. I'm exercising my giftings. I'm trying to be the servant with the 5 talents that's making 5 more, right? Um, how do I chill out? I've been thinking about like worship and Sabbath, like things built into our faith that's supposed to help us chill out. But yeah, like how do you as Craig like find that space?
It's hard because everything's pulling against it. Everything's saying fill the space. Everything.
Yeah,
And so we really think to be a human being is to be a human doing. It's very easy to get confused because there's no one telling you to waste time. There's no one telling you to take a break. There's no one telling you to turn it off. And in fact, the tech companies have gotten even more aggressive in almost locking you within their walled gardens so that the doom scrolling can continue. Like, so it has moved. Ted Gioia just wrote a great article at The Honest Broker, his blog, about how tech has gone from, distraction into addiction. That's actually what they're selling now. It's not distraction. It used to be distraction. Like, hey, you could do this time while you're waiting at the airport. Now it's like, I can't let you get away from me. And so it's addiction is actually what they're selling. And so that's where the dopamine feedback loop, right? That's why you end up in the doom scroll. It's designed for that. It's designed for that.
see, that's scary because I'm at church and I'm looking at 6-year-olds with their phones and their iPads. And see, I got my first phone at 16 or 17. And I can see myself getting like ravenous about like checking my updates and stuff. I can't even imagine someone doing it from 6 years old.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And the other thing that's really disingenuous on the tech side is they didn't do it and they wouldn't do it to their own kids. So, Steve Jobs, there's a famous discussion in, I think, New York Times where somebody went over to his house expecting the whole house to be like one giant, pad that you can touch and play with. And he's like, no, we don't really do a lot of technology in the house. No, I don't really let my kids on the iPad.
Because he knew.
He's like, I'm not going to expose them to that. I want them to be free thinking, awake, and alert humans, right? I mean, the guys who created Google, right? They're both kids who went to Montessori school. Wow. They just played with physical stuff, right? They were dealing with, with teacups, right?
Yeah.
Like Montessori school is literally like learning how to pour tea, learning how to clean up, right? Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Wow.
So I'm just saying, like, the smart kids of the future will be the ones that had less electronic exposure, or at least measured electronic exposure, so there was enough time in the brain to form the curiosity, the imagination, and that work that we do in our brain, right, where we're filling in the story. We're not just reenacting Spider-Man, right? But we're like combining weird characters and using the pieces of stuff around us and saying, oh, this is a sword. Oh, this is a shield,
It almost sounds like the words that come to mind is rebellion. Like honest creativity sounds like it's this manuscript that helps us rebel against, enslaving forces, but we don't know that it's enslaving us. Because what I'm hearing you say is like, this device is programming me.
It's trying to. It's trying to keep a hold of you. Absolutely. Right.
I'll be honest with you. I'm just gonna make a honest. I can't stop watching TikToks at night. This algorithm, they got me down.
Yes, they do. They in that whole they know you better than yourself. Yeah. Because they're just following the right. They're literally following the path of your both your thumb and your eye. And then we know that indirectly leads to the heart. But I'm not a fatalist about it because guess what? There's still an on and an off switch.
Yeah.
So I'm actually inviting people to turn off certain things, to turn on other things, right? To power down so that we may power up, if you will.
Wow. Thank you. I feel empowered. Before we go into our passage,
Yes.
you mentioned already you're a filmmaker as well.
Yes.
So you're an educator, you're a filmmaker, a writer. I wanted to think about like narrative storytelling. Like clearly a huge amount of the Gospels are parables. Well, okay, one, why do you think Jesus taught us in parables? Second, if he were here now, how do you think he'd be telling those parables? In what medium? What do you think he'd be doing?
Yeah. Well, the power of parables is that they're character-driven stories. And what makes stories interesting is every time you go back, you can actually read it through a different character. Oh. And you know, when you're young, you thought you were the younger brother. Now you're older, oh, I feel more like the older brother. Now at my age, oh, you feel more like the father. So I got the prodigal story at least 3 ways, depending on the stage of life.
Wow.
And kind of what's going on with you. So stories that involve characters, that's why we go back and back, you know. That's why you watch it again, right? First time I saw The Godfather, I was feeling like Michael, you know. Now I'm like a lot closer to Marlon Brando with, you know, a little mumbly thing and, you know, I'm about to fall down amongst the tomatoes, you know. So,
Never like Sunny?
well, there was definitely a Sunny era, right? That's what I'm saying. Like that's the beauty of stories, right? You relate to the characters at different ages and stages.
You know, that's really funny you say that because recently I was reading, it wasn't a parable. I was reading the story about the mob bringing the woman to Jesus so she can get stoned. And I always was just an onlooker in that story. And for a moment, I thought, I put myself in the shoes of one of the lawmakers who helped bring her there. And like just watching Jesus draw on the ground and he's taking his sweet time and how frustrated I was feeling. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're just drawing. And this was the first time that I was like really trying to pay attention to what he was drawing. Now, it said that he was writing, but I imagine Jesus was using art to process a very hard decision, in my opinion. And obviously when he's like, hey, any of you guys that never did anything, like go for it, go throw the rock. And then one by one, we're looking at each other and we're like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow, man. I'll just, and that was I wouldn't have had that unless I viewed these stories through a lens of film and narrative storytelling.
Well, and the ambiguity that results from not quite filling in all the details of the story. What was he writing?
Yeah.
What was he drawing?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard speculative sermons, you know. One time I heard somebody say, what if he was just listing other sins?
Whoa.
Right? So by the time he gets to the 4th or 5th one, right, people are slowly like exiting, like, well, okay, you got me there. Yeah, you're right. I can't really throw this rock, you know. But who knows? I don't know what he was doing, and that's part of what makes it fun. What medium would he be using now? It's hard to say. You know, would he use an addictive medium to try to get people out of addiction? It's an interesting question, right?
Would he be on YouTube?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, how does he? Would he? It's hard to know. If you think about the strategy of his day, there were still, I don't know, I would say versions of mass media spectacles. He actually didn't go into the Colosseum and say, well, I got 50,000 people here.
True.
And this is my chance. I'm going to make a statement. I'm going to do a healing right here. I'm going to resurrect that person from the dead. He's like, now I'm going to do a little private thing over at this house. And then we'll let the word spread about it. So, I mean, his method, it was actually 12. That was his method, 12 people. And that's how he chose to communicate the message amongst millions. And even those 12 didn't always work out, right? It was like, of course, there's going to be at least one of the 12 who kind of lets you down. So,
Yeah, it's a lot of young people that might be watching. It's interesting because they would maybe look at their own 12, maybe 30 subscribers, and like 5 of them are your family members, and you're like, oh. And you look at someone who has millions and millions of followers, but it seems like Jesus went deeper than wider. Is that what you're saying?
that is exactly what I'm saying.
Oh.
He had the 12 and he had the 3. It was good enough. He's playing the long game, right? If I actually make a difference in these 3 or these 12, they'll find their own 12. And that's, there's literally a book called The Master Plan of Evangelism that was written like 75 years ago by a guy named, I think, Robert Coleman. And that's what he says. The original plan is 1-on-1, 1-on-3, 1-on-12. And just do the math over a few centuries. We'll be fine.
Wow. So, okay, I'm a filmmaker, and some of the people watching are content creators, filmmakers, right? How do we think about going on 1-on-1, 1-on-3 while creating a medium that we hope is being watched by a lot and is paying our bills?
Yeah. Well, it's fine to engage in mass communication.
Okay.
But don't get an overinflated idea of what kind of difference it can make.
Ooh.
I've seen a lot of films that impacted me deeply, have moved me closer to God. But then how many people have I known who've impacted me deeply and moved me closer to God? Right? It's all part of a larger, a mass communication into my heart. But it's fine. Look, if you're going after the biggest screen in the world, you better bring a big story, right? Truly, go big or go home. So
Okay.
I'm all for big, massive storytelling and visual spectacle and splendor. All for it. But, Ben-Hur didn't change the course of history the first time it was made in 27, the second time it was made in 59, or the recent time when it was remade poorly in whatever year that was.
Yeah.
In each case, they probably thought this will be the film that changes millions of lives for the sake of Jesus, and maybe it did move the needle in some people's lives. But the master plan of evangelism isn't, I don't think massive stadiums and bigger screens. I think it's actually slower, quieter, and deeper.
Slower, quieter, deeper. Could you share from your own personal experience as an artist, creative, teacher, how honest creativity shows up in your own life, in your own creations? I know you brought up the screenplay before, but
I think the book's written out of because of the compromises I've made. There have been so many times when I have an idea and something, and then somebody says something, and they're like, "Yeah, you're probably right. It's no good." Or some teacher, critiques you, and you just like crumble, and you don't press through.
Dang.
So it's like you had the calling, you knew what you were supposed to do, and then you like talked yourself out of it because of all those things like discouragement and doubt and
Marketability. I'll tell you right now how many times I've changed my feature script because they'll say, "Oh well, but this executive gave this note. It needs to be scarier. It needs to be more fun, or whatever it is." Oh wow, that spoke to me so deeply.
I'm not writing out of success. I'm writing out of failure. Yeah. Or compromise. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But then you look at an uncompromised vision. You look at something like Lee Isaac Chung's Minari. Literally just started with like 80 index cards of like memories from his childhood. He's not even sure there's a movie there. if you think about the movie, it's just like 42 maybe slightly disconnected scenes that kind of involve his family and his grandma. You know, so there's a 3-act structure, but it's pretty loose. It's
Yeah.
really just kind of a scene, a memory. This was funny. This was hard. This was sad. Made for $1 million. You know, an Arkansas story. Shot in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
With a bunch of Koreans.
And 6 Oscar nominations.
Yeah, and woo! This is where the fire's at.
Woo!
And I remember crying so much in that movie because I was raised by my grandma.
You'd never seen anything that honest
Yeah.
from inside a Korean family story, probably.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No big budget, no big hoo-ha, no special effects. Most special effect, close up on the human face. Wow. Slower, quieter, deeper.
Slower, quieter, deeper. I want to jump into our word. So I'm going to have you read it. Is that okay?
Sure. I'll try to read it quickly, loudly, and woo!
Man, I hope everything's okay. This is our special effects. This is a sound effect that we're putting in. This is the passage. It's from Exodus 31, 1 through 6.
Exodus 31, 1 to 6. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I've chosen Bezalel, Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I've filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I've appointed Oholiab, son of Ahishamach, of the tribe of Dan." Yeah, thanks, I really appreciate this. "To help him. Also, I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you."
What comes up for you as you read that?
Design. If you think about it, the last 20, 30 years, the emphasis on design has been elevated. What's the TED talk? Technology, entertainment, design. It's the confluence of those three. Why has Apple triumphed over its competition? Design. So the fact that he was given the skills to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze.
And it sounds like he was given a lot to design.
All
Spirit
kinds
of
of
God,
detail.
with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and all kinds of skills. It's funny because when people think about artists or art or creativity, some might say, "Oh, this is a waste. Why would you give all the wisdom, understanding, knowledge, all kinds of skills, the Spirit of God, just so they could make artistic designs?" Why is it important for our world to have artistic designs?
Look, Hans Urs von Balthasar said that, Jesus, that was the ultimate waste of God. He wasted a life, wasted a beautiful life, just threw it away, tossed it on a cross, right? So the self-wasting of God is a very holy activity, perhaps the holiest of activity. So again, efficiency, waste, some of these metrics that we have right now has nothing to do with eternity. I think of a house like this and the craftsmanship that's actually been lost. The details of wood and craftsmanship that somehow got lost in mass manufacturing, right? How do we recover that? Or at least understand, maybe using new tools, the beauty of I guess, understanding our embodiedness and saying that there's a reason why textures matter and there's a difference in color and tone, and it creates different feelings for our eyes and for our fingers and for our bodies. There's tea that is better than other tea. And why don't you train your tongue to know the difference, right? So I believe, there's both the ascetic life of like, I'm trying to renounce the flesh, but I believe a little more in the aesthetic life, where the color, the texture, the tone, all of that stuff matters. Because I'm an embodied person, so I've got 5 senses, and how we engage with those senses. If it's rooted in beauty, we're going to approximate a little more of the beauty of God's world. Wow. I will also add, Hans Urs von Balthasar said that maybe he thinks a bit of the problem in our theology and our teaching is that we've inverted God's order. We've gone truth, goodness, beauty. But he said, how did God do it? He started with beauty in Genesis.
Ooh.
Then he was like, y'all seem confused, right? So then it was like, let me tell you how to behave, how to be good. And then it was like, you guys still can't figure it out. Let me write it down. Let me make it plain. Here's 10 commandments. Here's the truth, right? So, but he tried aesthetics first. And said, if you can understand beauty, you'll know how to treat each other, and you'll know what goodness looks like. Wow. But if you forget, here's a guidebook. And let me lay out the law in chapter and verse in, Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, the second law, in case you forgot it the first time. So I just want to get back to, in that sense, to the garden and say that he set the table. He created the set and then invited us to act on that stage, but it was a beautiful setting. So good design, I think, calls us back towards the garden.
And a big part of our role as believers is pointing to good design and beauty.
And saying that the fact that you understand what that is, doesn't that tell you, like you're making value judgments that are rooted in like, well, if there's beauty, then there is, why is that better? Why is that good? And crappy art, bad Christian movies, right? Because I wouldn't even use the word Christian, right? Christian's a noun, it should never be an adjective. It should definitely not be a marketing term. Just make good, beautiful movies, and that'll show people what you believe.
Amen. Amen. Towards the end of our podcast, I bless the guest.
All right.
And then I asked the guest to do something. Which is, if you could pray for someone that might be watching that really needed to hear the words you shared today, could you bless some of our viewers today with a prayer?
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Well, as long as I've known you've been so transparent about who you are, what you've experienced, and you're so willing to share that with the people you call students and mentees and in your art. And so, I feel like your journey is actually just beginning in terms of your art as well, too.
All right. I'll take that. At my age, I'll take that.
And I can't wait for all the beautiful things that you're going to do. Thank you so much for the gift of Honest Creativity and all the other books like I Gods and all that and the different films. I don't want to use this term loosely, but there's something about you that's prophetic and it speaks to truth. But you do it in such a way it's really easy to approach, because I'll be around other theologians and I'll be like, can you say that one more time? Right? All that to say, you help me see God in such a better, more honest, more beautiful light because of your presence. And I've been so blessed by you, and we at UVC, we've been so blessed by you. And so we're praying for you, your family, your students at GCU, and the profound impact your work is going to have for a generation that desperately needs to go slower, deeper. And the third one, quiet. Thank you. Anytime you're ready.
I'll just say, dear God, thank you for the next generation. Thank you for giving them all they need for life and godliness. But it's just sometimes hard to access. It's sometimes hard to believe in it. Sometimes hard to appropriate that. So give us the ability to slow down long enough to both breathe and receive all that you have for us. Give us the courage to be honest about our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations, our fears, our disappointments, our heartaches, our longings, and bring collaborators to us so that we may not feel that we're alone. Thank you for the gift of art that allows us to feel a little less crazy, a little less isolated, and a little more consolidated into a community. Thank you for this community, both watching the podcast, gathering in person at the Big Blue House, and thank you for Kenneth and the UVC team. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. You can grab Honest Creativity. There's going to be a link below in our video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment, question, subscribe. Every single comment and question I'm going to forward as emails. to Greg.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Just what I was looking for. Lovely.
Pushback. But thank you guys so much for joining us, and we thank you for being an uncommon voice, and thank you for being an uncommon voice. So, yeah.
My honor.